saying, Gary, tell me something I don't know. But it's true. It's true. And you always, when you hear it, usually it's leading up to an election. Elections have consequences. Oh, this is the most consequential election day ever. Until the next election. We're at a crossroads, my friends. Elections have consequences. Yes, ain't that the truth, right? Right. And that's the phrase, that phrase right there is the title of our next guest's latest op-ed into the Daily Connerton Memorial Company interview chair. He's the ranking senator on the Government Administrations and Elections Committee. So he would know that elections have consequences. He's also the ranking senator on housing. Ooh. So my first term, I was a member. I should wait till I'll save this for when he comes on. Because I was on the housing committee my first term. Oh, my goodness. He can have it. All right. He's a great guy. I love having him on. Let's welcome back to the show State Senator Rob Sampson. Senator, good morning.
Good morning, Gary. So glad to join you.
Are you kidding me? It's always my pleasure. I was just telling listeners, and some of them may have already known this. So my first term, I was on the housing committee. And we talked about the 830G. Of course, that was, matter of fact, we had a hearing one time for the 830G in New Haven in their city hall. But that wasn't, and that was a major topic of discussion that term. But also bed bugs was. I also remember that like dominating a lot of the issues that year. This was like 2015, so it was a while back.
I remember both of those things.
Do you really? Oh.
I remember debating the bed bug issue in the House for a number of hours, actually. The housing committee still a very active place. I mean, the Democrats are coming fast and furious with more and more, fair housing, they call it, requirements, and trying to, put, planning and zoning departments in local municipalities out of business by making, state laws that govern those things. Really, as you know, for the purpose of basically taking well-run small towns and divesting them of their resources so that they can prop up the poorly run cities. You got that, plus they're doing a lot of damage to landlords, and then they turn around and complain that there's not enough housing in the state. It's like you're punishing the very people that provide housing, and then you wonder why they're not doing it.
All right, well, so you're a real estate agent, right?
Yes, I am.
Then I'll ask you the golden question. Is there enough housing?
I don't see how there is not, to be honest with you. I mean, the population of the state of Connecticut is not growing, and certainly not growing in any leaps and bounds. I think what's happened is you had COVID, you had the governor's, mandates and advising tenants that they don't need to pay their landlords their rent. And I think it's just become a much more difficult place to operate as a property provider. And I think some of those folks are a little more cautious about publicly advertising their rents. I have a lot of clients that now list their rental properties only privately. They don't put them out publicly. They do word of mouth. They do referrals. So there might be the appearance that there are less rentals available. And in fact, there may be some decrease, but I don't think it's significant. And I think the answer is not the government getting involved in producing more affordable housing, God forbid, because they'll just make a mess of it. No, people think that we have a problem now. Wait till there's less private affordable housing and it's government housing. The answer is to really back off on the overregulation and punishment, effectively, of housing providers.
When I talk to real estate agents, they just say the inventory is not really there. And not just I don't mean necessarily this time of year going into the winter months where historically it's not really a time of year for northeastern, part of the country to go out and look for houses. Usually that begins in March or April. But I guess even looking over the summer months, they were saying that the inventory is down. If we're not having a population increase, then who's determining that? Where does that come from?
Right. Well, a couple things. I mean, first off, on your first point, you're right. People don't move during the winter months. I mean, I've been a realtor for God knows, since the 90s. And I've always worked through the winter, Gary, foolishly, But it's like I always look back in February and I'm like, why did I work since Thanksgiving to try and make something happen when very few things actually ultimately come to fruition? And people don't want to move during the holidays. They don't want to move when there's snow on the ground. Kids are in school, that kind of thing. So it's a difficult time. And certainly homes for sale, that number decreased dramatically. There's huge demand. In fact, I think that demand is still pretty strong. And that's a function of a high interest rates, the market being kind of screwed up ever since COVID, and the very real concern that if you sell your home, which you could sell your home for a lot more than maybe you could a few years ago, but then you'd have to go purchase another one, and you'd be faced with those high interest rates and so forth. I think that all led to a very significant reduction in available properties for sale. But again, if the population's not growing and the houses are not disappearing, then the housing still has to exist somewhere. And just because the Democrats are beating the drum about it doesn't make it real.
Let's talk a little bit about your op-ed, which people can find on www.senatorsampson, SAMPSON.com. Talk a little bit about your op-ed.
Yeah, no, so I wrote that op-ed kind of thinking about the whole Bridgeport election debacle. And as you mentioned in the lead-up to me coming on, that, the phrase elections have consequences, Barack Obama is the one who made that really famous, kind of pointing out that, all of his policies that he's enacting are a result of him being elected. And, so there to the Republicans, Obamacare, maybe being the biggest example. But I thought it was just ironic that the actual election issue in Bridgeport is also creating consequences. So I thought it had a double meaning, and I thought that was a good way to title that article. And I just hope that it does have a double meaning and that people do remember what happened in Bridgeport when we get around to November of 24. And they make smarter and, good choices about who they're going to elect to the state legislature, because the majority party there now, they don't seem to care about election integrity at all. And I list several reasons and evidence of that in that article. And the biggest one is that, we had a chance to fix some of these things. I mean, we've had many, many chances, but the biggest one was a special session which occurred in September of this year. Right after that video came out, we were in the state Senate, and I offered 5 amendments that would have gone a long way to preventing another Bridgeport from occurring, getting rid of the ballot boxes, putting more requirements on absentee ballot for signature verification, preventing the mass solicitation and mailing of those ballots, putting penalties in place. All of these I offered as amendments, and the Democrats voted them all down on party lines, showing that they have no real interest in addressing that problem.
Well, I love how you don't pull any punches. You highlight Republicans' efforts to improve the election security and how Democrats have no appetite for that. I mean, so what's their solution? I mean, how do you prevent another... It's so funny that because we use Bridgeport. Let me tell you something. Wanda Jeter got caught. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's only happening in the city of Bridgeport. I think there's been rampant fraud, actually, over the last couple of elections statewide. I'm not saying literally every town, but in a lot of towns statewide. But so what did we learn from all this? I mean, where's our $150,000 a year election monitor for Bridgeport? That never came to fruition. What did we learn from this? What's solving the problem?
Well, a few things, Gary. First off, you're absolutely right. The Democrats have no appetite. They don't want to fix it, is the answer to the first question you asked. They have no desire. It's working out for them. And so are the very loose election laws and regulations that we have in the state of Connecticut. As far as, rampant fraud, I think it is occurring pretty much everywhere. I don't know if I'd use the word rampant, but think about this. The mass solicitation of votes by mail, by absentee ballot, just leads to opportunities. You have loads of people. I have tenants, actually. I'm a small landlord. I own a few different properties. I've had tenants reach out to me saying that they received ballot applications from, like, the last 4 or 5 people that lived at that address. Now, they're honest people, and they're not filling those things out, but you can see that could happen. You also have situations where, people can go, for their parents or kids away from at school or their elderly parents. I mean, these things actually do happen. It's hard to say whether it's happening on what kind of scale, but you can bet that it's happening in every town on some scale, even if it is very small. And even a very small scale matters. In Southington, in the last legislative election, my good friend Tony Morrison, ran as the Republican candidate for an open seat, and he lost by one vote. So you can see one vote can make a big difference. Wow. And I'm quite certain that, any town, Connecticut, certainly has at least that much fraud leading, as a result of the absentee ballot process.
But I don't know. I brought that up because I said rampant because it makes me wonder how many other elections across the state have been impacted by, and I'll use the term that our Secretary of State, Stephanie Thomas, used, bad actors exploiting bad election laws, right? I mean, I don't think it's an isolated incident. That's all I'm saying. And
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you that it is happening. It is happening everywhere. I don't know if it's 100 votes in the town of Southington or it's 4 votes. It doesn't matter. As far as I'm concerned, any single vote that should not be occurring, that we have the means and the ability to prevent fraud, it's our responsibility as a state government, to prevent it from happening. And the Democrats, certainly on that committee, the Secretary of State, the governor, and certainly the leaders of the 2 Democratic caucuses, they have no interest, none whatsoever. We have tried over and over again. We will go back in February this year. I will propose the same bills I do every year. The photo identification, signature verification for absentees, preventing the mass mailing. I'm all for their, the majority of their policies that they propose to expand access to voting. Because, of course, we want people to have access. But they're doing it in a very clever way, where they're not just providing access, they're also providing the means for bad actors, to use, the Secretary of State's term, to actually get away with things. And I want to prevent that. I want to see our elections legitimate, because every time you have a bad actor or a bad vote, that is depriving someone else of their legitimate vote.
Rob, stay right there. I got to take a very short break. We're going to come right back more with State Senator Rob Sampson after the hour of 9. Our guest, a former colleague of mine when we were in the House together. Of course, he moved on to something bigger and better over in the Senate. State Senator Rob Sampson. Senator, let's switch gears and talk about the crackpot ideas that Communist Party sympathizing Democrats on the Labor Committee are pushing. They want to unionize the world, everything, right? I mean, I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, you mentioned I was ranking member on GAE and housing, but you left that one out. I'm also ranking on the Labor Committee, and that's the one where I wonder sometimes whether I need my head examined. That's like walking into a brick wall.
You didn't ask for that, did you? Did you ask for that?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did. I felt we needed a strong voice, somebody to put up an equal effort in the opposite direction, advocating for free markets, capitalism, less business regulation, and more opportunity for employers, employees, and Connecticut's future. And so I try and do my best with that. But of course, it's difficult when we're outnumbered on the committee, almost 3-1, I think. But it is what it is. They are up to no good all the time. And, if you're looking for reasons why Connecticut is not blossoming, that it's right there. It's the number of regulations that they're imposing on Connecticut businesses, which are preventing new opportunities from being created. And it's hurting everyone. It's not just the business owners that I'm concerned with. I'm concerned with the fact that they are the creators of opportunity and jobs for everyone.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, you've got sympathy. You have my sympathies for serving on the housing committee, and I can only imagine how that committee, the labor committee, how you're able to survive on that. But you're also, all right, let me make sure I have this because I'm running out of time. You're also on the judiciary committee, which is led by another recent honoree of the Connecticut Communist Party, right? So what pro-criminal laws could get passed this upcoming session, then?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, I think that the Democrats are actually caught. I think that they have been banging the drum over the last several years to try and proclaim despite us seeing it with our own eyes, that crime is down. I mean, this is the kind of thing that they say. If you follow the two, chairmen of the Judiciary Committee on the Democrat side, that this is for the kind of text or rather tweets they put out every day. Crime is down. Here's the proof and everything else. We all know that's not true. So they're caught. And I think that they're going to try and paint a picture that they're trying to do something to address it. But they are the source of this problem. They created the policies that have effectively reduced penalties for juvenile criminals, have led to massive increases in car thefts and other things. I don't know what's going to happen this year. I think that they're going to try and paint a picture that they're trying to address the crime, but of course they're not. They like things the way they are.
You recently thanked constituents for helping to more or less pump the brakes, no pun intended, on the anti-consumer choice for the EV mandate, electric vehicle. Then you said, quote, what we must do now is remain vigilant and to stay active, end quote. Talk about that for a moment.
Sure. Well, I mean, I love any opportunity, Gary, where the people of the state of Connecticut get involved in an issue and they actually win the day. The Democrats, if they had their way, we'd have tolls. We'd have a ban on gas-powered cars. We'd have a lot of bad things. But they can only get away with what they can get away with. I mean, they have the majority of votes in the legislature, but that's not the only factor. They have to be able to make sure that they don't anger the citizens, to a point where they're going to get thrown out of office. And people stood up. They said we're not going to put up with this ban on gas-powered cars, and they helped us defeat it from happening. But of course, as you know, from serving in the legislature, it's not a one-shot deal. You can defeat a bill one year, but they just come back the next year, or the year after that. And I've seen a number of things. National popular vote is one thing. I fought that so vigorously year after year and prevented it in the legislature. But finally, after 4 or 5 years, they managed to eke it over the top. And there are a lot of examples of that. So we do have to remain vigilant. But more than anything, Gary, if there's one thing I can do, and I can't thank you enough for being a leading figure in this battle, by being on the air every day as the Republican voice of reason, letting your listeners and the people of Connecticut know what these issues are. That's what needs to happen. People got to get involved and force change, no matter who's in power, whether it's Democrats or Republicans.
Amen to that, brother. But we truly, and in 2024, look, we have to. I think we've got the power right now to make some big changes. Do you foresee a day? I'm not necessarily saying next year, but maybe we can make some strides next year. Do you see a day where the Republicans will have the majority in at least one of the chambers?
I think that will happen only when Republicans return to their values and fight for them. That's my greatest concern. I think that Republican voters are continuously more frustrated with Republicans not living up to their principles and values, and I think people are staying home. We've seen several examples of that. There are people that were once popular Republicans in the state who their margins are slimming down every time, and I think that they erroneously believe that that's because the state is trending in the opposite direction. And I don't think that's the case. I just think that Republicans in general are more skeptical of their own elected officials, and they're not going to support people unless they actually share their values. So I encourage my colleagues every day. We're there for a reason. We're there as Republicans, to promote the Republican worldview, and we should do that. We should do that without fear, and we should do that with pride. And I think people will follow us. And I think you run the risk of alienating your own base if you don't.
Yeah, what I think it is, and I think they're so worried about winning their next election and trying to be all things to all people and remain on the populist status, and they forget a lot of their core conservative values, which led them to run for office in the first place. State Senator Rob Sampson, I could talk to you for another half an hour easily. We'll have to get you back on sooner, but I appreciate your time this morning. I hope you had a great Christmas, and I wish you the best in the new year.
You are wonderful, Gary. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a happy new year also. And I wish your listeners a very prosperous 2024.
Right back at you, brother.